Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Catholic Narcissist Recovery, where we're on a mission to help you reclaim your life after narcissistic abuse. We're joined today with Chris, who's going to help us share her story on how to be grateful during your season of suffering. Hello, Chris. Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah,
It's good
this
to
is
see
a
her.
big topic too. I know we both just said how we could just talk about this for a lot.
Hours.
So, how to shrink this into a couple of impactful bullet points. So, the first one of the things that I always like to do and help people say, or just kind of give you guys some practical things to do is um, your practice of gratitude. And I know it is hugely hard when we're in the pit of suffering to feel like there's anything to be grateful for, but there always is. And we have to do things differently in order to transform and heal. And like I just said, I mean, that's in Matthew 9:17. It talks about the transformations require a new approach. So if I really want to pour new skin into new wineskins and get rid of the old, I have to do things differently. And before, I would just stick in my head because that was the safe place, right? I because that was where I hid and lived, was right here. But now what I do is I literally in my bedroom, I have a wall and I've got this big, huge piece of paper. And every morning I've got a pen. And if it's one thing or 10, I don't know. I just get up and I literally write down things that I'm grateful for. It could be anything, anything. Like I said in earlier, when I first left my marriage, I didn't have anything but my clothes. So having a bowl and a fork to eat out of, I never thought that I would feel the immense gratitude of that, but I did, which was amazing. So gratitude is huge. The other thing that I always like to do in practicing a new behavior is seeing how God is working in our lives, even in the midst of suffering. He's still there, bringing beauty out of our ashes. He always, always does. And so I do a thing called an evidence journal. And I think what we discover is the the more we come out of abuse, the more we waken up. I think there's a part of us that just falls asleep. I don't know how to explain that entirely, but anyway, the more we're out of it, the more we awaken. And the more we're awakened, the more we're aware. And I think that the more we're aware, we'll start to see God in the details of our day. And it doesn't have to be anything big, but sometimes it's the smallest things. And so an evidence journal is just a journal where you jot down only those things where you saw God in the day. It could be how somebody just said something. They had no idea what they really said, but it was just what you needed to hear at that moment. And you were like, you tucked that in, or, and it could be anything, right? So I think finding God and finding the goodness and journaling it down so that when you go back and you reread what you wrote 6 months ago in that evidence journal, you're going to see how God is with us every day, every moment, every second of our day. And so therefore it's going to increase our trust, which for a lot of us is a process to do.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think it speaks to another prayer and practice I really like to do is called the Examen Prayer,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it starts off with
Mm-hmm.
gratitude. We have to start with gratitude and then we reflect on the rest of our day, where
Yeah.
we fell short, where we performed well, asking for graces. It's a bit of like a mini examination of conscience done daily.
Yeah.
It's fantastic, but gratitude is so important. I think especially like when we're in such intense suffering, it's really hard for us to see God working, and Satan loves to isolate us and keep us in a really negative mindset. So we have
Mm-hmm.
to really fight back against that and reclaim the truth and the goodness of the season that we're in, because there's always goodness and there's always fruits no matter what season we're in. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just important to remember that God is in control, and whatever season God has us in, he wants us to profit from our suffering. He wants
Mm-hmm.
us to receive fruits from the season that we're in. We're not meant to just suffer without a purpose. That's the wrong way of suffering.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah. So if you're not seeing fruits or joy out of your suffering, like look at the saints. They were like martyred brutally, and yet they were so happy because they had a purpose. It was Jesus. It was unifying them
Mhm.
closer with the Lord. And it's a
Mhm.
supernatural joy. And we actually have to ask for that grace. We have to ask, like, Jesus, I need more love. I need more faith. I need more hope. Help
Right.
me to see my situation in the eyes that you see it. Because it's very easy to just get negative and be like, oh my gosh, my life is so hard. My suffering is unbearable. Like, I can't continue. But with God, He can
It's
turn our tears literally into dancing.
right. I mean, he tells us with God, all things are possible.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that I love to reflect on too is, the gifts of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
That's in Galatians, I believe, but the gifts of the Holy Spirit is usually what help me joy,
Joy,
um,
peace, love.
love.
Oh my, I don't remember
There's
the
like, I
there's
know,
like
but
12 at
anyway,
least.
look them up.
Yeah.
But if I'm not experiencing any of those gifts, and it's the opposite of a lot of those gifts, I know it's not from God, right? So what can I do that's going to combat that? And one of the things, and I'll bring up the Catholic narcissistic therapist that you've introduced me to. He's talked about freedom from to freedom for, and so that's identifying freedom from whatever. I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough, um I can't, whatever, like all that kind of thinking,
Those lies.
to freedom for or freedom to is I am lovable, I am worthy, I am all the things of who I am as a daughter of Christ. But I have to retrain my brain to not just know that, but to disseminate it down into my heart to truly know that within the
Exactly.
intimacy of the relationship that I have with them. So I think it's so important for us to like get out and do things differently in order to heal. And you can do it because we were trained for so long to sit in the unhealthy way of living. Um,
Yeah. And one thing I'd add to that as well is how we can have more joy in our suffering is to
mhm.
serve others.
Yeah.
It's really easy for us just to get so preoccupied and fixed on our own suffering that we kind of lose sight that, it's not all about us. Like everyone is suffering. And there's people out there that have way harder circumstances and situations, not to diminish what we're going through, because God really cares and doesn't want us to suffer. But serving other people, even when you're in a weak place, can give you a lot of fruits. I have so many stories. I remember one time, I'll just
Hmm.
share quickly.
Hmm.
I went to catch up with a friend. She was going to really console me. I was in the thick of, going through some really difficult things with a narcissist, and she was going to console me. But it ended up that I was consoling her, and I'm like, I don't even know where these words are coming from. The spirit was just like working through me, and she was crying. I felt like the Lord was just like on fire in the presence there, and I'm like, look at that! Like when we just go out and put ourselves out there, the Lord can work through us no matter what season we're in. So yeah, just don't let Satan kind of keep you like closed and isolated. Like God doesn't
Yeah.
want us to live like that. There's no such thing as no suffering. You're always going to have suffering.
Right. Well, and it's always better to give than to receive,
Yeah.
right? And it's never about us. But sometimes when Satan's really got a stronghold, he will isolate us and make us feel like nobody else is going to understand or relate to what we're going through. And that's so false. So, yeah, it's always better to give than receive. And
Yeah.
also, I think it's important to be vulnerable. Like sometimes you just need to 2 minutes, talk to a
Mhm.
friend and say, this is, and then all of a sudden, because it takes the power out of the negativity or whatever it is that we're feeling. Because that, again, that's not of God, right? That's Satan wants us to feel that way.
Amen.
Um, so sometimes, yeah, just finding a community like this community that we're creating or that you've said yes to is absolutely powerful.
I agree. I agree. I
Hmm.
think it's beautiful for
Hmm.
us to journey together if we have these wounds of narcissistic abuse. Like, know that you're not alone. There's
Right.
millions of people who've gone through this as well. You're not the first person to go through this suffering. And we want to
Exactly.
help. We
Yep.
receive joy when we help our brothers and sisters. So, yeah, come join us. Don't be afraid. There's hope, and have joy in your suffering. Ask for the grace in our normal, natural way. It's not easy to do this, but with God's grace is working through us, we can
Mhm.
have joy no matter what season we're in. And
Right.
joy, let me tell you, joy is the best antidote when you're dealing with a narcissist. They do not want to see you happy. And if you have the joy of the Lord, that like burns their soul. That is how we can reach the narcissist through love, is letting Jesus's love work through us.
Absolutely.
Let's leave,
Absolutely.
let's
Yep.
leave it at that then.
Yeah. That was great. Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect.